Empires are only as strong as their foundations. That quiet line, spoken by a 61-year-old black father in a room full of billionaires, would soon shake the very heart of Silicon Valley. How did a $500 million deal, one that promised to change everything, crumble in spectacular fashion after a single gala night? What led a rising black CEO to walk away from the most powerful family in the city, and what happened when the old guard decided to strike back? This isn't just a story of business. It's a story of dignity, family, and standing tall when the world expects you to bow. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The glossy envelope arrived one Thursday morning, hand-delivered by an impeccably dressed courier. Gerald Whitaker, a 61-year-old retired civil engineer, admired the cream-colored stationery and the heavy gold embossing, the Harrington Foundation annual gala. He frowned, unsure why he'd been invited to such an elite affair. His son, Malcolm Whitaker, a 38-year-old tech CEO whose artificial intelligence firm had taken Silicon Valley by storm, explained that this was part of securing a new $500 million partnership deal. "Dad, the Harringtons are old money," Malcolm had said over their weekend brunch. "They want to see who they're getting into business with. It's more about appearances than substance." Gerald chuckled. "Son, you know I'm no good with these fancy types. I wear a suit maybe twice a year. You won't have to do much. Just smile, be yourself. I'll handle the rest." Gerald agreed, trusting Malcolm's judgment. That Saturday evening, the Harrington estate was ablaze with light. The sprawling Georgian mansion, nestled in the exclusive enclave of Woodbridge Hills, glittered with chandeliers, and valets in white gloves ferried away a stream of black town cars and luxury SUVs. Gerald arrived with Malcolm, wearing a well-pressed navy suit and polished brown Oxfords. The Harringtons' world smelled of wealth, floral arrangements costing more than some folks' monthly rent, crystal flutes of Dom Perignon, the hush of old money conversations in Ivy League accents. Malcolm introduced his father to several business contacts before they reached the hosts. Claudia Harrington, a 39-year-old heiress with platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, extended a limp, cool hand. Her younger sister, Vanessa, 36, and Claudia's friend, Whitney Grant, 38, clustered nearby with the same thin smiles. "Mr. Whitaker," Claudia said with a perfunctory nod. "How interesting to meet you." Gerald sensed the subtle weight in that pause. Still, he extended his hand with an easy smile. "Pleasure's mine, Miss Harrington." "Lovely evening." Claudia didn't take his hand. Instead, she glanced past him at Malcolm. "You brought your father. How quaint. Most partners send proxies to these things. But perhaps you do things differently at Whitaker AI." Vanessa tittered softly, sipping champagne. Gerald's posture remained steady, though he noticed the dismissive eyes that flicked from his graying hair to his brown skin to his modest cufflinks. Whitney chimed in, "Mr. Whitaker, do you find these circles overwhelming? One hears your background is in, what was it? Construction." "Civil engineering," Gerald replied calmly. 40 years of it. Built some of the city's major infrastructure. Maybe even some of the roads that brought you here tonight." Whitney blinked. Claudia's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened. "Well," she said, her voice silk over steel, "those who lay foundations rarely mingle with those who build empires." The insult hung in the air. Gerald's throat tightened, but he refused to let it show. Beside him, Malcolm's jaw set. "Empires are only as strong as their foundations," Gerald said quietly. Before the conversation could escalate, another guest approached, and the women drifted away. Malcolm pulled his father aside. "You all right, Dad?" "I'm fine," Gerald said. "This isn't my first time in a room like this. But I can tell, these folks don't respect us." "Not really." Malcolm's eyes were cold. Let them underestimate us. They moved through the crowd, but the tone was set. Over the next hour, Gerald endured a stream of subtle slights. Questions veiled as compliments. Polite laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. Conversations paused when he approached, then resumed in clipped tones. At one point, he overheard Vanessa saying quietly to Whitney, "Honestly, I don't know what Malcolm thinks bringing his old father here achieves. It's almost embarrassing." Gerald said nothing. But deep inside, something simmered. Later, during the formal dinner, Gerald was seated several seats away from Malcolm, by design, it seemed. He found himself between two older white executives who spoke over him, as if he weren't there. When he tried to contribute to the conversation about urban redevelopment, one executive remarked, "Well, that's one way of looking at it. But I think we prefer the opinions of today's innovators." Gerald pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. Across the table, Malcolm noticed. His eyes darkened, but he remained composed. Dessert arrived, petite trifles in crystal cups. Claudia rose to give a toast. "We are thrilled," she said, lifting her glass, at the prospect of bringing Whitaker AI into the fold. A rare opportunity for upward mobility. Her gaze flicked toward Gerald, voice laced with patronizing sweetness. "And how lovely that Mr. Whitaker Sr. could join us. It's always charming when family participates, even from humble beginnings." A ripple of polite laughter followed. Gerald's face remained impassive, but inside, the simmer turned to fire. Malcolm's grip on his fork was white-knuckled. By the time the gala wound down, both father and son had endured enough. In the car ride back to their hotel, Gerald broke the silence. "Son, that deal of yours. You need these people." Malcolm exhaled slowly. "Their money's big. It would accelerate our expansion. But after tonight..." He shook his head. "They think they're buying us. That's not happening." Gerald nodded, voice steady. "Then don't let it." Malcolm's eyes gleamed with resolve. "They'll find out soon enough." Outside, the city lights blurred past. Inside the car, father and son sat in unspoken agreement. The Harringtons had made a mistake. They'd disrespected the wrong family. And the consequences would soon follow. Sunday morning dawned gray and cool, the kind of early summer day when the fog still hugged the San Francisco hills. Gerald and Malcolm met for breakfast at a quiet cafe overlooking the bay, far from the opulence of the Harrington estate. The tension from the night before still hung between them, unspoken but heavy. Gerald sipped his black coffee and watched the boats drift by. "I know business is business," he finally said. "But there's a line, Malcolm. A man's dignity, that's not for sale." Malcolm stirred cream into his coffee, brow furrowed. "You're right, Dad. I thought if we played it smart, we could build the company and stay above the noise. But last night..." He shook his head. "They didn't see me as a partner. They saw me as someone they could buy. And you? They disrespected you openly." Gerald's eyes were calm but sharp. "And you're going to do something about it?" Malcolm nodded slowly. "I've got a plan. It's not about making a scene. It's about showing them that Whitaker AI doesn't beg for scraps at anyone's table." They parted ways after breakfast, Gerald heading back to his home in Oakland, Malcolm to his company's headquarters downtown. The Whitaker AI offices occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek new tower, glass, steel, and innovation pulsing through every floor. Malcolm called an emergency meeting with his executive team, COO Janet Price, CTO Devin Brooks, and head of legal Ethan Cho. "We need to talk about the Harrington deal," Malcolm began. He laid out the events of the gala, every slight and insult detailed without dramatics. His team listened in silence, jaws tightening, faces darkening. "We're in the final stages of closing a $500 million partnership," Ethan reminded. "Walk away now, and it'll rattle investors. The board will demand an explanation." "They'll get one," Malcolm said. But not through a press release. I want the message to be clear: Whitaker AI chooses partners who respect us. Devon, his fingers drumming on the table, leaned forward. You thinking of canceling outright? Malcolm nodded. We don't need their money. Not if we pivot fast. Janet, how fast can we shore up secondary funding? Janet's eyes gleamed. I've been working on contingencies. There are other firms eager to invest, and frankly, less entitled. Good, Malcolm said. We'll line those up. Then we'll pull out of the Harrington deal, but on our terms, publicly, so there's no mistake about why. A murmur of approval went around the table. The following days were a blur of quiet strategy. Janet firmed up alternate investors. Devon fast-tracked the next product release, ensuring momentum. Ethan drafted a carefully worded statement for when the time came. Meanwhile, the Harringtons remained unaware of the storm brewing. Claudia sent Malcolm a follow-up email, polished and formal, *, we look forward to finalizing our partnership next week. The foundation gala was a delight, and I trust your father enjoyed himself. Please confirm the closing schedule. * Malcolm read it with a cold smile. They thought they had one. He crafted a polite, neutral reply, *, I'll be in touch after internal discussions. Thank you for the evening. * At the same time, Gerald kept an ear to the ground. His old engineering network still stretched across the Bay Area. Word of the Harrington Foundation's attitudes wasn't news, many had endured similar slights in silence. One afternoon, over coffee with an old colleague, Gerald said quietly, Malcolm's going to make this right. You'll see. By midweek, Malcolm was ready. Contracts signed. Backup funding secured. And a media strategy has been prepared. He scheduled a private lunch with Claudia Harrington at the exclusive Bayview Club, Neutral Ground. The room overlooked the water, polished mahogany and crystal gleaming in the midday sun. Claudia arrived precisely on time, flanked by Vanessa and Whitney. Malcolm stood to greet them. Ladies. Claudia air-kissed the air beside his cheek. Malcolm, so good to see you. I trust everything is in order. We need to talk, Malcolm said evenly. They took their seats. A waiter poured wine. Claudia's smile was practiced, polished. I assume you've reviewed the final terms. I have, Malcolm replied. And I've also considered the spirit of this partnership. Business isn't just numbers, Claudia. It's values. And after last weekend. He let the words hang. Claudia's brows lifted. Surely you're not suggesting we can't work together because of a social gathering? I'm saying that Whitaker AI won't partner with anyone who disrespects my family. My father. His gaze was steady. That is non-negotiable. Vanessa scoffed softly. Whitney whispered, You're overreacting. Malcolm ignored them. Consider this notice, we are withdrawing from the deal. Effective immediately. Claudia's smile finally faltered. You would walk away from $500 million. Yes, Malcolm said. Because my integrity, and my father's dignity, are worth more. Claudia's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. Your investors will question your judgment. Malcolm stood. My investors will see a company that values respect over money. And so will the rest of the industry, soon enough. He left them sitting there, stunned, the unfinished wine glistening in the sunlight. Outside, Malcolm dialed his father. It's done, Dad. Gerald's voice was warm with pride. Good. Now let's show them what Whitaker men are made of. The storm was about to break. And the Harringtons weren't ready. By Monday morning, the business world was buzzing. The news broke fast and wide, Whitaker AI withdraws from $500 million Harrington partnership deal citing core values misalignment. It wasn't just a quiet withdrawal, it was a message. Malcolm had made sure of that. Every major tech and financial publication picked up the story. Asterisk TechCrunch. The Wall Street Journal. Bloomberg. Forbes. Asterisk some headlines speculated on internal strife. Others hinted at a brewing cultural shift in Silicon Valley. Black-owned tech firm takes a stand against old money disrespect. Inside Whitaker AI's offices, the mood was electric. Employees who had heard about the humiliations at the gala were openly supportive. On Slack channels and in team meetings, messages of pride poured in. "This is why I joined this company," one software engineer wrote. "Finally, someone is taking a stand." Meanwhile, the Harringtons were reeling. Claudia, used to controlling narratives, hadn't expected such a public, unapologetic move. She convened an emergency meeting with her lawyers and PR consultants at the Harrington corporate offices in downtown San Francisco. "They blindsided us," Vanessa fumed. "He didn't even give us a chance to respond." Claudia's expression was ice. "Because he knew a response wouldn't matter. Now they're painting us as villains in the press." Whitney shook her head. "The social media backlash is worse. Have you seen the hashtags? Hashtag respect first, hashtag Whitaker 1T bend, hashtag old money new world. We're getting torched." One of the PR consultants, a young man named Jared, spoke cautiously. "You'll need to issue a statement. Something that shows contrition, or at least professionalism. Denying won't work, it'll make things worse." Claudia's jaw tightened. "There will be no apology. We have nothing to apologize for. This is business. Not a social cause." But as the hours passed, the pressure mounted. Influential tech leaders began tweeting support for Whitaker AI. High-profile black entrepreneurs weighed in, sharing stories of similar disrespect in elite circles. Even prominent venture capitalists began murmuring about the new culture emerging in the valley, one that wouldn't tolerate thinly veiled racism, no matter how old the money. That afternoon, Gerald sat at his kitchen table in Oakland, reading the news on his tablet. The headlines made him shake his head in disbelief. Never in his career had he imagined seeing such a public stand, let alone led by his son. The doorbell rang. It was Marcus, an old friend from Gerald's engineering days. "Man, you seeing this?" Marcus said, waving his phone. Gerald smiled. "Yeah, I'm seeing it. Your boy, he's making waves. Big ones." Gerald nodded. "He's doing what I couldn't do back in the day. Walking away instead of staying silent." Marcus sat down, eyes wide. "The Harringtons, word is, they're panicking. Some of their old partners are pulling back. They don't want the heat." At Whitaker AI's offices, Malcolm called another leadership meeting. "This isn't just about us anymore," he told the team. "It's about what kind of company we're going to be. And what kind of example we set." Janet grinned. "We've already had 3 new investors call this morning. People who wouldn't touch us before. They like that we're standing on principle." Devin added, "And talent, have you seen the applicants? Engineers, designers, and data scientists. Our inbox is full." Malcolm's expression was resolute. "Then we keep going. We grow this company the right way. No compromises." But not everyone was pleased. That evening, Malcolm received an unexpected call, from his board chair, Stephen Rhodes, a seasoned investor with ties to old money. "Malcolm, we need to talk," Stephen began, his tone clipped. "You've made quite a stir." "I did what needed to be done," Malcolm replied calmly. "Yes, but in doing so, you've upset certain circles. The Harringtons have long memories." Malcolm's voice sharpened. "Then they can remember this, Whitaker AI isn't for sale." Stephen sighed. "You're risking other deals, future partnerships. Not everyone will applaud this." "I'm aware," Malcolm said. "And I'm prepared." Stephen paused. "Just, be careful. They won't take this lying down." The warning lingered in Malcolm's mind long after the call ended. But he refused to be swayed. Meanwhile, back at the Harrington estate, Claudia seethed. The more she saw of the coverage, the angrier she became. "No one humiliates me publicly," she said to Vanessa and Whitney. "Especially not someone like him." Vanessa smirked. "Then what's the plan?" Claudia's eyes gleamed coldly. "We hit him where it hurts. We make sure his little company learns who runs this city." And so, while Malcolm and his team rode a wave of public support, dark currents began to move beneath the surface. By the end of the week, Whitaker AI's triumph was still echoing through Silicon Valley, but beneath the public accolades, cracks of resistance began to form. Gerald sensed it before Malcolm did. He'd seen this dance before in his decades navigating boardrooms and project sites. Old money didn't just swallow public humiliation. They found ways to bite back. Late one afternoon, Gerald called Malcolm from his workshop at home. "Son, watch your step," Gerald warned. "They won't come at you straight. They'll use back channels." "I know, Dad," Malcolm replied, though his voice was taut with frustration. "I can already feel it. Calls that used to get returned in minutes, now taking days. Certain VCs are going quiet." And it was true. Behind the scenes, Claudia Harrington and her allies were making moves. They didn't waste time with open threats. Instead, they leaned on their connections, country club whispers, boardroom gossip, a subtle campaign to undermine Whitaker AI's standing. It began with a leaked story in a second-tier business paper, Whitaker AI's leadership style called into question after abrupt deal withdrawal. No named sources, just industry insiders. The insinuation, Malcolm was impulsive, difficult, a risk. Then came a sudden delay in a key supplier contract. The supplier, usually prompt, has now raised concerns about fulfillment risks. Behind the scenes, Vanessa had made a few pointed comments to the supplier's CFO at a private luncheon. Even city permits for Whitaker AI's planned expansion hit unexpected snags. Paperwork misplaced. Approvals are under further review. Gerald recognized the signs immediately. This was coordinated. Over lunch at a quiet Oakland cafe, he met with Malcolm to lay it out. "This is no coincidence," Gerald said. "You embarrassed them. Publicly. Now they're trying to remind you who still controls the chessboard." Malcolm's jaw tensed. "I expected this. I just didn't think it'd be this fast." Gerald leaned in. "Fast or slow, they're testing you. You back down, you confirm every stereotype they're pushing behind closed doors. You hold your ground, they'll think twice." Malcolm nodded, determination settling in. "Then we fight." Back at Whitaker AI, Malcolm called an emergency leadership meeting. "They're trying to squeeze us," he said, voice calm but steel-edged. "But we are not backing down. We're doubling down." He outlined a new strategy, diversifying suppliers, fast-tracking recruitment from new markets, bypassing traditional VC pipelines, and courting younger, values-driven investors. "Janet, how's the alternate funding track?" "Solid," Janet replied. "Two major funds are ready to come in. They like what we stand for." "Devon, how's product readiness?" "Beta's stable," Devon said. "We can go live in 6 weeks, ahead of schedule if needed." "Good," Malcolm said. "Then we move." He also instructed Ethan, their head of legal, to prepare a dossier, a quiet but thorough record of every delayed permit, every supplier hesitation, every whisper campaign they could document. "If they want a fight," Malcolm said, "they'll get one. But on our terms." Meanwhile, Gerald moved in his way. He met with old contacts across the city, black business leaders, former engineers, church elders, and community organizers. Word spread through the informal networks that the Harringtons were trying to bring the hammer down. The response was swift. "I'll talk to my cousin at the mayor's office," one friend said. "See what's holding up those permits." "I know someone on the supplier's board," another offered. "They won't want to be seen as puppets." The black business community, long used to such tactics, quietly closed ranks around the Whitakers. But the Harringtons weren't done. At a private charity gala, Claudia met with several old guard CEOs. "He's ambitious," Claudia said coolly. "But reckless. If he won't play by the rules, perhaps it's time we show him what the rules are." By week's end, Malcolm received a summons. Stephen Rhodes, the board chair, wanted another private meeting. At a discreet club in Nob Hill, they sat in a paneled library. "Malcolm," Stephen began, "you need to consider the bigger picture. The board is nervous. There's pressure from some of our backers to make amends." "Amends?" Malcolm's voice was sharp. "For what? Standing up for my father's dignity?" Stephen's gaze was cool. "There are ways to smooth this over. Issue a clarifying statement. Perhaps an apology for any misunderstanding." Malcolm stood. "There was no misunderstanding. And there will be no apology." Stephen sighed. "You're making enemies in powerful places." Malcolm's voice didn't waver. "Then they should think twice about making an enemy of me." As he walked out into the night, the city lights flickering below, Malcolm knew the storm wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And he would face it head-on. By the following week, Malcolm and his team were in full counteroffensive mode. The leaks and delays orchestrated by the Harringtons had failed to shake their core. If anything, they had solidified Whitaker AI's resolve and sharpened its focus. Malcolm arrived at the office early Monday morning. The glass tower gleamed in the sunrise, the city below waking to another frenetic day. But inside Whitaker AI, the energy was different, coiled, purposeful. In the executive conference room, Malcolm gathered his senior team. "We're done reacting," Malcolm began. "Now, we move first." Janet smiled. "Already ahead of you. The new supplier contracts are locked in. No more relying on the old guard." Devon added, "Product launch is locked for 4 weeks from today. Beta response has been strong, we can ride the momentum." Ethan, legal binder open, said, "We've tracked every point of interference. If they escalate, we'll be ready to go public." Malcolm nodded. "Good. Now for the bigger piece, our new investor consortium." "Janet?" Janet pulled up a slide deck. "We're in talks with 2 major minority-owned funds. They're not just offering capital, they want to be partners in culture. We also have backing interest from international firms looking to diversify into US tech." Malcolm leaned forward. "That's where we'll plant our flag. Let the old guard have their clubs and galas. We're building something better." Meanwhile, in the Harrington circles, frustration was mounting. Claudia, unused to resistance, found herself increasingly isolated. Her attempt to pressure the supplier had backfired. Rumors swirled that Whitaker AI's withdrawal had triggered an awakening among younger, more diverse investors across the valley. At a private board meeting of the Harrington Foundation, an older director spoke bluntly. "You've mishandled this, Claudia. Public perception is shifting. Your tactics are outdated." Claudia's face remained composed. "The boy is reckless. He'll overextend. Just wait." But the board wasn't convinced. Behind the scenes, a few began distancing themselves. Even some old money allies started murmuring at country clubs, "Did you hear what she said to the father? Foolish. These days, you have to be more careful." Word reached Gerald through the grapevine. Over coffee with Marcus, he shook his head. "They're starting to eat their own," Gerald said. "But don't think they're finished. Pride won't let them." And sure enough, another move came. One of Malcolm's key patent applications, scheduled for fast-track approval, was suddenly flagged for further review. The timing was no accident. Claudia had reached out to a contact within the agency. That afternoon, Malcolm got the news. He didn't flinch. Instead, he called Ethan. "Prepare the dossier. And start a quiet outreach to the media. If they want this to go public, I'll oblige. At home that evening, Malcolm met Gerald for dinner. They're still at it, Malcolm said, sipping his drink. Trying to stall our patents now. Gerald's expression was calm. And you'll handle it. I will, Malcolm said. But I won't lie, this fight is bigger than I expected. Gerald leaned back. Son, you think this is just about you? It's about every black entrepreneur who's ever had a door slammed in his face. You're not fighting alone. Remember that. Malcolm nodded, the weight of his father's words settling in his chest. 2 days later, Malcolm received an invitation, an exclusive industry summit hosted by the mayor's office, showcasing the city's most innovative companies. Normally, Harrington-backed firms dominated the guest list. This time, Whitaker AI was featured prominently. A subtle signal, but a powerful one. The winds were shifting. When Malcolm arrived at the summit with Janet and Devon, the reception was electric. Young founders approached, eager to shake his hand. Investors introduced themselves, eyes bright with interest. And across the room, Claudia watched, her expression stony. The tide she had tried to control was slipping away. Lines had been drawn. The old money's grip was weakening. And Malcolm was leading the charge into a new era. The summit proved to be a turning point. Malcolm's speech, clear, confident, unapologetic, made waves across the industry. The video clip of him standing before a packed room, saying, "Innovation without integrity is hollow. We don't just build technology, we build culture," spread fast across social media platforms. By the following morning, the clip had gone viral. Major outlets picked it up. More importantly, it caught the attention of an unexpected ally, Ayanna Reid, founder of the $3 billion Reid Capital Ventures Fund, one of the most influential black venture capitalists on the West Coast. Ayanna reached out directly to Malcolm. They met for lunch in a quiet corner of her firm's expensive downtown office. "You've made quite an impression," Ayanna said with a smile. "Not many would have walked away from that kind of money." Malcolm replied, "Money comes and goes. Principles stick." Ayanna's smile widened. "Exactly the kind of partner I like. Let me be blunt, we want in. And not just as investors. We want to help shift this industry for good." Malcolm didn't hesitate. "Let's talk terms." The new alliance formed quickly. Within a week, Reid Capital committed $200 million in fresh funding. 2 other funds followed suit. The press coverage was electric. Whitaker AI secures $350 million in new capital after high-profile split with Harrington Group. At Whitaker AI headquarters, the mood was triumphant. The message was clear, Malcolm hadn't just survived the Harrington retaliation, he was thriving. But the Harringtons weren't finished. Claudia seethed as the news broke. Her boardroom influence was slipping. Allies questioned her judgment. Even old friends began suggesting she step back. "No," Claudia said coldly. "He humiliated us. This isn't over." She called in her remaining favors. A friendly senator. A banking ally. The plan: cut Whitaker AI off from key credit lines and regulatory fast lanes. Days later, an unexpected audit was announced on Whitaker AI's export compliance. Permits stalled again. Bank processing on a major account was delayed for review. Subtle moves, hard to trace. But Malcolm saw the pattern. At the next leadership meeting, he laid it out. "They're still trying to choke us," Malcolm said. "It's coordinated." Ethan nodded. "We're documenting everything. And Ayanna's legal team is watching too." Janet spoke up. "Do we go public?" Malcolm thought for a long moment. "Not yet. We stay the course. Let them show more of their hand." Outside the formal channels, Gerald worked quietly. He called in old favors. Community leaders, state contacts, and even a few well-placed friends in the media. Watch their next move, Gerald advised his son. You shine a light, they'll scatter. And then, the next move came. A private email leaked, a message from Claudia to several board members calling Malcolm an arrogant child who doesn't understand how the world works. The leak hit the media within hours. Public backlash was swift and brutal. Hashtags trended again. Hashtag arrogant no more. Hashtag Black Excellence Rising. At a hastily called Harrington board meeting, the older members were furious. You've cost us more than you know, one said. But Claudia refused to back down. I will not let him win. Meanwhile, at Whitaker AI, Malcolm received an invitation, this time from the mayor herself. A private sit-down. An offer of city support for Whitaker AI's next expansion phase. When Malcolm arrived at City Hall, he found not just the mayor, but several major public and private leaders waiting. We've watched this unfold, the mayor said. And we stand with companies who stand on principle. You have our full support. Malcolm thanked them, understanding the deeper meaning. The old guard no longer controlled every lever of power. After the meeting, Malcolm called Gerald. Dad, he said, the game's changing. Gerald's voice rumbled with pride. You're changing it, son. One move at a time. But even as new alliances formed, Malcolm knew, the Harringtons would make one last play. They had too much pride, too much history to simply walk away. And when they did, he would be ready. It came on a Wednesday. Quiet, deliberate, one more card from the Harrington deck. An anonymous complaint was filed with the Federal Trade Commission, alleging unfair hiring practices at Whitaker AI. Baseless, of course. But enough to trigger an inquiry. Enough to generate another round of whispered headlines. Is Whitaker AI too exclusive? FTC opens inquiry. Inside Whitaker AI headquarters, Malcolm read the news on his screen, jaw set. Across the table, Ethan closed his laptop with a sigh. They're desperate, Ethan said. This complaint won't hold. But they know it'll cause friction. Malcolm nodded. And that's exactly what they want. Keep us distracted while they rebuild their image. Janet added, Ayana's legal team is already on it. And the FTC chair is, let's just say sympathetic. The case will crumble. Still, the timing stung. Whitaker AI was weeks from its biggest product launch. Any cloud over the company could impact momentum. Later that evening, at his father's house in Oakland, Malcolm vented his frustration. They won't stop, Dad, he said. Every time we rise, they throw more dirt. Gerald, sitting on the porch, sipped his tea. Because they're afraid, son. You're not playing their game anymore. You're rewriting the rules. That scares them more than any deal. Malcolm looked out at the street where he'd grown up. The same streets Gerald had built, literal foundations. You always told me, Malcolm said quietly, some fights aren't about winning. They're about standing your ground. Gerald's eyes gleamed. And you're still standing. Back in the city, Claudia Harrington was anything but calm. The leak of her email had cost her allies. Her board chair was now openly questioning her leadership. Her younger sister Vanessa urged caution. Let it go, Claudia, Vanessa warned. You're burning too many bridges. But Claudia's pride wouldn't allow retreat. He humiliated me. I won't be made a fool. Her final gambit was personal. She arranged a backdoor meeting with Stephen Rhodes, Whitaker AI's board chair. Convince him to force Malcolm out, Claudia urged. Replace him with someone more agreeable. Someone we can work with. Stephen, still a product of old money himself, wavered. I can try, he said. But Malcolm has too much support now. The board won't back me. Then remind them, Claudia said coldly, where their fortunes come from. And so, a final effort began. Stephen called an emergency board meeting, agenda undisclosed. But word reached Malcolm before the official notice did. Janet barged into his office. Board meeting. No reason given. It's a setup. Malcolm stayed calm. Let them come. I'm ready. The night before the meeting, Malcolm and Gerald sat together again. You're going to face a room full of them tomorrow, Gerald said. And you'll look them all in the eye. Not as a man asking for a seat, but as one who built his table. Malcolm's gaze was steady. They think this is about me. It's bigger than me now. Gerald smiled. Then go remind them. The next morning, the Whitaker AI boardroom filled early. Stephen Rhodes presided, looking more strained than usual. Before we begin, Stephen said, I must inform you, certain members have raised concerns about leadership direction. Translation, the Harringtons were leaning hard. Malcolm, seated at the head of the table, didn't flinch. Then let's hear it, he said evenly. Stephen cleared his throat. There are questions about the public stance taken in recent weeks. About the company's ability to weather controversy. One older board member added, we're hearing from old partners who feel alienated. Malcolm stood. With respect, he began, voice steady, our company was not built to comfort the old guard. We were built to innovate. To lead. And to show what integrity in business looks like. He paced slowly. Yes, I walked away from the Harrington deal. Because I will not compromise my values, or this company's, to appease anyone. He looked each board member in the eye. You want stability? We've secured $350 million in new funding. You want growth? Our product is weeks from launch, with more inbound interest than ever. You want a reputation? We are on the right side of history, and the public knows it. He paused. If anyone here thinks we should go back to bowing before old money, you're free to vote. But if you do, you'll be voting against not just me, but against every employee who believes in this company's mission. The room was silent. No one dared speak first. Finally, Janet leaned forward. I move that we affirm our full confidence in current leadership and direction. I second, Devon added. Votes were cast. One by one, each board member, even the hesitant ones, voted in favor. Stephen sat back, defeated. Malcolm remained standing. Then let's get back to work. By afternoon, word spread, Malcolm's position was stronger than ever. The attempted coup had failed. And across town, when the news reached Claudia, she finally realized, her war was lost. The new era wasn't coming. It was already here. With the board behind him and the Harrington retaliation blunted, Malcolm poured all his focus into the next milestone, the product launch. Whitaker AI's new platform, an advanced machine learning engine designed for scalable enterprise use, had the potential to reshape several industries. Public excitement was building. The viral momentum from the boardroom standoff had drawn attention from far beyond Silicon Valley. Mainstream media outlets now wanted interviews. Thought leaders were praising Malcolm's integrity. But Malcolm stayed grounded. In meetings, he reminded the team, this isn't about headlines. It's about delivering. At headquarters, a rhythm of preparation took hold. Final testing. Marketing rollouts. Partnership briefings. Meanwhile, Gerald kept his ear to the ground. His old network buzzed with pride. You see what your boy's done? Marcus said over lunch. Half the city's watching. You know what this means for young black founders coming up. You've changed the game. Gerald smiled but stayed humble. It's Malcolm. He's done the work. I just told him to stand tall. In the final week before launch, Malcolm met privately with Ayanna Reid. We've come this far, Ayanna said. But be ready. When this platform takes off, the backlash will grow louder. They won't stop. I know, Malcolm replied. But they can't stop what's already moving. And moving it was. Pre-orders were ahead of forecast. Interest from Fortune 500 companies was pouring in. Global markets were taking notice. Even some former Harrington allies began making quiet overtures. An old banking partner approached Janet with an olive branch. "Tell Mr. Whitaker we admire how he's handled this. We'd like to discuss future collaboration." Malcolm wasn't naive. "They see which way the wind is blowing," he told his team. "We'll choose our partners carefully." Then came the morning of the launch. Gerald joined Malcolm at the headquarters rooftop, looking out over the city skyline. "Proud of you, son," Gerald said quietly. Malcolm smiled. "Couldn't have done it without you, Dad." As the countdown ticked toward the live stream event, the world watched. In the broadcast studio, Malcolm stepped in front of the cameras. No script, no teleprompter. Just conviction. He began. Whitaker AI was built on two principles: innovation and integrity. Today, we launch a platform that embodies both. And we do it as a company that stands for more than profit. We stand for respect, for inclusion, and for a future where business leaders are measured by character as well as success. The live stream drew millions of views. By day's end, Whitaker AI's new platform had shattered industry expectations. Pre-orders tripled. New investor interest flooded in. More importantly, the narrative was clear: a black-owned tech firm had faced down old money, refused to bow, and still delivered industry-leading innovation. Across social media, the hashtags trended again: #hashtag Whitaker Way. Hashtag Black Excellence. Hashtag Future is Now, *. At the Harrington estate, Claudia sat alone, watching the news feeds. No allies left. Her board fractured. Her influence diminished. Vanessa, ever pragmatic, said softly, "It's over, Claudia. He's won." But for Malcolm, it wasn't about winning. That night, back in Oakland, father and son sat together. "You did more than launch a product today," Gerald said. "You launched a message. One thing this city won't forget." Malcolm nodded, eyes steady. "And we're just getting started." The days following the launch were a whirlwind. Whitaker AI's platform wasn't just a success, it was a seismic shift. Industry publications hailed it as the most versatile and ethical AI engine on the market. Demand was outstripping forecasts. New clients signed on daily. Inside the office, the atmosphere was electric but focused. Janet was fielding calls from international partners. Devin oversaw a technical team now working around the clock. Ethan's legal team was buried in new contracts. Malcolm moved among them, steady, calm. The more the world praised, the more he focused on keeping the company's culture grounded. "This success belongs to all of us," he told his team at an all-hands meeting. "But remember, our values led us here. We never compromise those." Across Silicon Valley, the message resonated. Young black entrepreneurs reached out to Malcolm in waves, emails, DMs, handwritten notes. "You gave us an example. You showed them we don't have to bow. You opened a door." Gerald, reading some of the messages at Malcolm's house one evening, shook his head in quiet awe. "Son," he said, "do you understand what you've done?" Malcolm looked up. "Not yet. Maybe it's bigger than I thought." Meanwhile, in the old money circles, the fallout deepened. The Harrington name, once a golden ticket, now carried a whiff of tarnish. The leaked email had spread too far. Boardrooms whispered. New entrepreneurs avoided them. Some of Claudia's old allies quietly resigned from her foundation. Others pivoted, making public donations to diversity-focused tech funds. And at the Harrington estate, Claudia faced a reckoning. The family board moved to replace her as chair. New leadership was called in, young blood, eager to modernize, eager to distance themselves from the debacle. For the first time in decades, Claudia's influence was broken. But even in defeat, old pride remained. In a last-ditch effort to regain relevance, Claudia's PR team crafted a statement. It praised Whitaker AI's achievements, subtly framed the earlier dispute as a misunderstanding of generational values, and pledged to listen and evolve. Malcolm read it when it landed in his inbox. He shook his head. "They're trying to save face," Janet remarked. "A little too late." Malcolm considered. Then, with clarity, he replied, "No comment." Publicly, he refused to engage further. The victory was clear. No need to belabor it. Instead, Malcolm focused forward. Ayanna Reid approached with a new proposal, a coalition of minority-led venture firms and tech companies. A formal alliance. A new power block to counterbalance the old money influence that had dominated for too long. "You're the catalyst," Ayanna told him. "Without this stand, none of this would be happening." Malcolm agreed. "It's time. Let's build it." Plans moved swiftly. Meetings were set. Other rising black and brown tech founders signed on. A new ecosystem was forming, one that didn't rely on the Harringtons of the world. At a press conference, Malcolm spoke carefully. "We don't tear down, we build. We don't wait for permission, we lead. And we believe in a future where business is driven by respect, by vision, and by accountability." The applause was thunderous. Gerald watched from the back of the room, a quiet smile on his face. He'd seen the arc of this story for decades, but now, a new chapter was being written. Later that night, father and son sat again on Gerald's porch, Oakland lights flickering in the distance. "You taught me to build my foundation, Dad," Malcolm said. "Now it's holding." Gerald nodded. "And one day, others will build on top of it." Malcolm's phone buzzed, another partnership offer. Another congratulatory message. Another door opened. The future was no longer uncertain. It was here. 3 months later, the shift in Silicon Valley was undeniable. Whitaker AI's platform was now considered essential in enterprise AI ecosystems. Major corporations that had once overlooked black-led firms were now eager to align themselves with the new wave of innovation and integrity. The coalition Malcolm had helped form with Ayanna Reid was gaining real power, setting new standards, mentoring young founders, and creating opportunities where once there had only been closed doors. And the Harrington name? It was still spoken, but not with reverence. It had become a cautionary tale. The gala, the leaked email, the public defeat, etched into industry memory. Claudia remained in the shadows, her role diminished, her influence scattered. At Whitaker AI headquarters, the company had just celebrated its largest quarterly earnings to date. More importantly, their employee base had grown by 35%, with a sharp focus on hiring from underrepresented communities. Malcolm had never lost sight of what drove him. "This isn't just about tech," he reminded his team at an all-hands meeting. "It's about building something that lasts. Something our kids can look at and say, we belonged here. We led here." One crisp autumn morning, Malcolm invited Gerald back to headquarters, not for strategy, not for a crisis, but for recognition. They stood together in the newly completed lobby, sunlight streaming through the glass walls. On the far wall, an etched plaque gleamed, the Gerald Whitaker Foundation wall in honor of the men and women whose integrity, perseverance, and values built the roads we now walk. Gerald stood in silence, eyes misting as he read the inscription. "Son, you didn't have to," Malcolm smiled. "Yes, I did. Because before there was Whitaker AI, there was you. A man who taught me that no amount of money matters if you lose your dignity." The staff applauded as Gerald, overcome for a moment, simply embraced his son. Later that evening, on the familiar porch in Oakland, they sat again as they had many times. "You know," Gerald said, "back when I was working job sites and sitting in those meetings, I used to wonder, would it ever change?" Malcolm leaned back. "It is changing. Not just for us, for everyone coming up behind us." Gerald nodded. "Because you didn't just build a company. You built a message." As they watched the city lights blink in the distance, Malcolm's phone buzzed again. Another invitation, this time, from a National Innovation Council. Not an old money circle. A new table. A seat offered, not forced. Malcolm smiled. He turned to Gerald. "We're just getting started, Dad." And this time, Gerald knew, his son wasn't just changing one company, or one industry. He was helping to rewrite the future. Dear friend, in a world where success is too often measured by wealth alone, this story reminds us that integrity, respect, and the courage to stand for what is right are values that can reshape industries and lives. Every voice matters. Every act of dignity builds a stronger, more just foundation for future generations. If this story moved you, if it made you think, then please, like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that shine a light on voices too often overlooked. Together, we can amplify the stories that deserve to be heard and help build a more inclusive and respectful future. Thank you for watching.